Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
There was an attempted assassination on the former president, Donald J. Trump. If you haven't seen that headline, I don't know where you've been, probably out in the woods somewhere, and you didn't have cell service, because I'll bet you that headline and that news has hit more people around the world than who knows since Michael Jackson died. I don't know what to even compare it to, but I think everybody in the last 48 hours has learned that President Trump, some 20-year-old punk from a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, took some shots and actually managed to squeeze off a number of rounds from 130 yards away. I've got my good friend Tom Myers on here again. Tom, retired FBI, ERT supervisor, and all of that is going to come into play, especially on the things that I want to cover here. But let's just start off. I mean, like I said, everybody knows what happened, kind of the gist of it. And what I really want to discuss today is how the investigation is moving forward from here. You know, what those guys are looking for. Obviously, the ERT from Quantico, and I'm sure there's so many federal agents up there in Butler, Pennsylvania. It's probably doubled the population by now. But first of all, Tom, I hope you're doing well, buddy. But, let's just get into this, man. How in the hell could this happen?
Yeah, so a little more background. So for viewers, both you and I went to Ranger School in the 90s. We're you're commandos. You don't sleep. This is what you do. You make sure everything's done the right way. Security, alternate plans, everything else. That's the background for you and I, the commonality. In between that, I was a police officer. I actually did one of these in support of one of the presidential visits. The First Lady came into town. So I know from the police officer point of view. And then I was in an ops center a couple of different times in my FBI career, the FBI one, and then over at Homeland Security. So I kind of know the culture a bit, and I know how the Secret Service sets up and everything else. So how could it happen? I suspect that I'm going to go out on a limb on this. We probably had 3 different communication systems going at once out there. You had the Secret Service, number 1, you had the state police, number 2, and you probably had that local agency that was out there. And I'm going to guess they were assigned for outside that perimeter, that visual barriers, is the fence line out there, and they couldn't talk to each other. That's what I'm going to guess. I'm going to say, boy, I hope it's ineptitude and it's not something more nefarious than that. But my goodness, I'm without speech.
Well, especially when you have the rhetoric that has been going on in the last years, but especially in the last 6 months, threat to democracy, a threat to our nation. What are all the things even President Biden has been saying? Jill Biden called President Trump evil. And this isn't just like on a social media post that hardly anybody sees, like, what I would do. This is the First Lady out there speaking to, who knows, hundreds of people. And well, with them, it's more like tens of people. And then, but it gets magnified, especially with the media. They magnify and they get these clips and they play them over and over and over. And they've so vilified former President Trump that it just, to me, it's like you are setting. And okay, what was the last one? Biden actually say it's time to put a bullseye on Donald Trump.
Yeah,
that kind of rhetoric. You know what? Most of us hear that kind of stuff, and you're going, "Oh, he's just talking metaphorically." But there are psychotics out there, and people that are barely hanging on to reality and life in general, that are out there that hear that, and they say, "Oh, that's my cue." And I've got a good friend, Michael Yon, that even said, there are people that are literally being trained, and he's a specialist, especially with Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think I'm going to try to have him on the show here in the next little bit, but he understands how these people are being groomed to even be like suicide bombers, and they're being prepped, and they're just sitting there waiting. They've been trained, they're ready. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened here, but I am saying there are people out there that are just on the edge. And I think once they really delve deep into this 20-year-old kid, they are going to learn that this kid was, well, first of all, he all through high school he was bullied, he was a loner. um he couldn't even make the high school uh uh rifle team because he was such a bad shot, which is, thank goodness he was that bad of a shot. Otherwise President Trump might be dead right now. And I mean, you got all these circumstances, and then you got this crazy rhetoric going on. All of these circumstances come together, and you have the culmination, and then some kind of a level of incompetence based on the scouting of the t- again. I have to laugh because I'm so pissed about this. It's like, really? Are you kidding
Yeah.
me? With the current circumstances, I mean, if you look back at September 10th, 2001, what was the circumstances right before 9/11? And it was this kind of level of uh, the signs were all there, but people were just ignoring them or completely missed them. There's just the level of incompetence that was going on then is just incredible. So that's kind of my view of where we were, or where, on Saturday and everything, and kind of the atmosphere that's going on now. But you know what, Tom, as a seasoned investigator, and I don't know how many shootings you've actually
Yeah.
uh, you know, been the supervising. Yeah, and you know what? Yeah, I think it'd be really worthwhile to explain to the audience what an ERT is.
Okay, let's jump into it. So, evidence response team, Pittsburgh is going to have the lead on this, the lead office on this. And this is really where the FBI shines, and shines well, and maybe even the best. Counterterrorism and counterintelligence, things like that, very good. And public corruption, that's what they specialize in. And I heard it once said very adroitly, was police work murders, you guys work conspiracies. So this is the conspiracy. I'm just saying the complexity and the level of it. So when I go out and do these speeches or talks and everything else, people ask me, like, I worked with you guys, it's gridlock and everything else. Well, it's different. It's like working on a battleship or an aircraft carrier versus working in a small boat like a SEAL team. And you hope that the two are really competent, but you wouldn't want to put a SEAL in charge of an aircraft carrier. Contrarily, you're not going to put somebody else. So it is very much different, but this is where they shine. And why they shine is because we have those evidence response teams in all the 56 field offices, and there's going to be at least one up to 5 or 6 is the high number with the really big offices. I had 3 in Baltimore, and each one of them has a camera, and they'll move out, and there's a 24-person complement with additional backup people that can augment that in a heartbeat. So Pittsburgh is probably about the same size, and they'll get contiguous offices sent over there right away. So probably before the end of the day or within midday Sunday, you had 200 workers on site is what I would guess. All of them ERT trained, and all of them do collection very, very well, and they do it very organized. You're also going to have, what rounds out is the shooting incident response team, SIRT. None of this is sensitive. It's all on public records out there. We'll explain exactly what that is. So you're going to get round out units that come in from, and I'm using some military parlance there, you're going to get round out units, specialty, slice elements that are going to come in. And that's going to be your trajectory people and other special photographers and measuring devices that are going to come in, as well as interviewers and inspectors and things like that. That's probably another 100 people that are coming on board. So we're talking roughly around 300 investigators on this. This is the biggest thing since probably 9/11. I mean, I'm sure there's some comparative, but going back to the Hinckley-Reagan shooting, that's the last time we had one of these. So they know the importance of getting this right. And good forensics takes the fire out of these conspiracy theories. And I preach that over and over again. And there's a lot of competent people that are out there doing this. So what they're doing right now is establishing an organized process to catalog all that information. You can bet they're getting the names and identities of every single person who's a potential witness for what they saw, because they're going to be overly comprehensive. As a police officer and doing forensics myself, and this was the film days when I was, if you shot 36 photos, that was a lot. Maybe 2 rolls, 4 rolls of film, that was a lot. So we're talking roughly 100, 125 photos, easily 1,000 photos at a shooting like this. This would probably go a bunch of cameras. I'm going to guess at least 10,000 images are going to be exposed on that. So every piece of ground. And in addition, what's going to happen is they're going to scan that entire ground over there and bring it down to 1 millimeter of accuracy. So they're not going to just use Faro scanners to do that. They're going to use specialized equipment, theodolites, and they're going to get out there and bring that down to 1 millimeter of discrepancy. So they have that exactly. So we don't have another Abrams Zapruder film from JFK where people are taking shots at it. Good forensics takes that away. Another example, Navy Yard shooting. That shotgun couldn't fit in that backpack is what I heard over and over again. Well, that was an assumption that was put out, I'm guessing. And I'm not really in my purview with saying that, but I think probably what happened is our offender in the Navy Yard shooting put that 870 pump action shotgun, disassembled it, and probably secreted it under his coat if it didn't fit in the backpack, because it's hard to collapse something down that small. My point is, those are possibilities. There was an assumption, and the bag doesn't make that doesn't have those same dimensions is how those conspiracy theories run wild. But good forensics takes that away, and contemporaneous and reporting and things like that, not sitting on the information. The truth is going to come out on this. It already is, because you can't get away with everybody has a camera right now and everybody's taking films and footage, and the geo positioning of everybody is going to put everybody in position very quickly. So they're going to have, I'm going to guess, I don't know how many people are in attendance there, but I'm going to guess several hundred are going to be interviewed here, and probably have already started doing that. They're already cataloging everybody. But that's the magnitude. So let's bifurcate that right now, as long as I'm on a roll on this. It's going to work off the known forensics. So the scenes that we have right now, aside from that giant encompassing scene that's there, but the specific tight scenes are going to be the areas of impact of the rounds. Of course, the former president's podium area. We're going to have the shots that were taken by the Secret Service person, the CAT team member up on the sniper's nest, we'll call it that. We're going to have our offender. That is going to be a scene. We're going to have the offender's car. The car we already know had munitions inside of it, IEDs, such like that. They're going to walk that back to his residence very quickly. They're already on his electronic means, and all of that is going to build a giant matrix on one side that's going to spawn other leads off of that. And that's where your continuity goes from, and that is enmeshed with all of those leads that are going to be cut out from there. So that's ground truth right there, is your potential scenes. And then, like I said, we have the electronic means. That's going to be his phone and all his communication devices. That's done by the CART people. That's the computer people. And then the evidence, the pure evidence, is going to be done by the evidence response team. Pittsburgh's going to have the lead on that. You're going to have a very strong leader who's going to have parking spaces and putting out that evidence in situ, so it doesn't sit and go into a back closet. Rather, it's going to get exploited very well. And when I say that, I mean they're going to check it for fingerprints. It's not going to just disappear and then pulled back later on. And you're going to have professionals that are going to decide what's that. Of course, DNA is going to be pulled from that right away as well. All of that is going to be deconflicted at Quantico. This is probably the biggest crime scene since 9/11. So you can bet it's all ships at sea and every man on deck right now is going to happen. So that's probably a rounding out of what's going on right now. And if I had to estimate, boots on the ground, we're probably talking 300 workers, and support crew is probably going to bring it out to 500 pretty quickly. And they can do that. They do it very well. And they're, of course, going to be enmeshed with the state police. They're going to be augmented with that, and maybe even the local PD if they're big enough
Yeah.
to do that.
Well, I think it's important also to think about this isn't just a federal investigation because uh, based on the press conference that was there, the attempted assassination is going to be the federal. So that's what the FBI is taking the lead on. And clearly that's a key piece. But the second piece is the people that were actually injured and the one retired police chief, and his name escapes me right now. I apologize, but that was actually killed. And what a stud that guy was, man! Jumping on top of his daughter and throwing his wife and daughter down and jumping on top of him to protect him, and then he actually literally took a bullet for him. So rest in peace, hero, man. That dude. But the sheer fact that he was murdered at that, and that is, I know, what the Pennsylvania State Police are taking over, and then the other two individuals that were actually hit. So, to me, with that mass of humanity that was in the line of fire, the one shell that or the one shot that took, that hit President Trump in the ear. I don't know if that's actually the one that hit. Is it? It's not Cacciatore. What is that? Police chief.
Complexities, I think is his name, is a fire chief there.
Yeah.
Complexities, and I'm doing that off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And
apologize if we get his name wrong, but so which round actually hit him and killed him versus hitting the other two? That's I don't know. Will forensics be able to actually tell that?
Yes, they're going to have that pinned down to like I said, 1 millimeter, no problem. And now with not even photograph, you're going to have all the videotape that was going on, and then pretty big press corps covering that. So it's not going to be a problem meshing all of that together and having it make sense pretty quickly. So I mean, like I said, the story will be told very well. I go back to the Parkland shooting down in South Florida at the school there, the high school, and they were able to geolocate everybody from their phones and their radio transmissions, so where all the police officers were. And so this is a no-brainer, no problem. They're going to be able to do that pretty quickly. And now we're quite a few years beyond that now, so the systems are very robust, and they do geolocating very quickly. And then speaking to you, saying the joint investigation, I used to hear that quite a bit. I was the liaison to DHS both in the operations center and its inauguration when it was first stood up, and then later on I came back as the acting senior rep to DHS from the FBI. So I know the ops center. I was also a counterterrorism watch commander at one point as well. So I understand the tempo. I understand what happens on these things very quickly. I used to say when there would seem to be some kind of Jerry Springer sort of thing that people want to fight over jurisdiction, and unless it's a bad case or something, then they want to dump it off on you pretty quickly. But the truth of the matter is forget that. Who has primary jurisdiction? The answer is, do you have dual jurisdiction all the time? Now, that being said, there are occasions where we've been told to go away, and I can think I forgot the name of the newspaper, the Gazette, that was over in Anne Arundel County, where that madman came in and killed a lot of the press people there. And they just said, we're going to work this through the state system, and that's fine. We augment them and we supplement them accordingly, and we stay outside the perimeter if they want us to come in or not. And there was no federal nexus there. There was no request for it, and that's fine. But this, clearly you have an overlap right now. So this is obviously going to be a dual jurisdiction that's going to take place unless the state people defer and say, you guys run it, we'll get copies later on. And that could very well happen too. It's more likely.
Yeah, but you know what? My understanding is the federal system doesn't really process homicides anymore.
I can't say what they're going to do on this one over here. I mean,
well, I'm just going based on the press conference that they had there with that, what is it? The SAC, the special agent in charge,
right?
Along with the colonel and the lieutenant colonel from the Pennsylvania State Police. They said it's going to be two investigations. The federal is going to be over the actual assassination attempt, and then the homicide and the attempted homicide for the three Pennsylvania victims. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, like you said, they're going to be sharing data. They're going to be sharing, uh, equipment. I mean, it's the same crime scene. So even though they overlap, um, I'm sure that the two are going to absolutely complement each other, and which they should. It's the same thing. It's like the bullets that hit President Trump are the same bullets that hit the murder and the attempted murder victims. So it's all, to me, it's all coordinated. But let's out of everything that you're looking at. Well, first of all, I think, as a side note, I think it's awesome to know that DNA is actually what identified the shooter. So I saw a couple of comments on, I can't remember if it was on a video or what, but they're saying, how can DNA, how can they even say that DNA, again, this is where all the conspiracy theories come out. They're saying, how can they say that DNA uh, identified the shooter? It's like somebody had his DNA, in advance, and they knew about this. And I was like, no, you know what? Rapid DNA can identify this guy within 90 minutes. They have his profile. All they had to do is, I'm sure they probably kind of knew who he was, but yeah, identifying him via DNA with rapid DNA. All they had to do was just take a little blood swab out of him, and man, they could do that super fast. And there's folks in Pennsylvania that I've trained, with the MVAC, and I've seen their labs, and I know that there's rapid DNA systems right there. So
Yeah,
that's
first class system. Pennsylvania SWAT responded out with a Rook machine on a one of the scenes I went to early on when I took over the evidence response team. Top shelf agency right there. They came out and it had a shield to it. It's basically a skid loader that has a shield to the front of it, and this is what ultimately brought this siege, this barricaded young man who had killed a police officer before, to an end. This is all online. All the imagery are. So they're very competent, very good, and
yeah.
as you could tell from the briefings, and you can tell. So I'm somewhat distracted by listening and looking for a validity scale if anybody's not telling something that, like, why are you doing that? So no, absolutely. And Jared, you and I have spoken about this. There's maybe 200 or plus around that, forensic savages, people that either detectives or crime scene techs that really, really understand this. Some journalists and writers and such too that really understand the broad base of DNA and trajectory and fingerprints and can speak to that, and they can really bring it home, and they're using that core of forensics knowledge to drive a lot of what they're seeing. So when there's something that doesn't make sense, um, and I'll break from that for a second. Example, I think what we sent out, that close-up image of from President Trump's ear, and you could see that what appears to be that trajectory coming, that line right through his scalp, actually, by the ear there, and that's what you know that's what we look at right away. That's what we're assessing, like battlefield assessment, right away to tell us what happened on that. When I heard that other man was dead, and it's either a headshot that takes place, but usually that tells me it's an M4 because there's just so much more velocity, and it was a headshot, so either one would do that with a high powered pistol or something like that. But and then
But
jumping off
it
you for
wasn't
a
a
second.
223 either. This one was, they said it was a 556. So you've got a higher grain there and probably some more, pump behind it. So yeah, whoever that actually hit it's probably going to take him out. And sadly enough, that's what happened to that police or that fire chief. So, but yeah, that the fact that they have image of that round that's, right behind President Trump's head.
That as well, yeah.
Yeah, boy, that just shows you the level of imagery. Because what is that traveling at? 3,200 feet per second or something like
If
that?
I recall, yeah, 3,800
Yeah,
feet
that
per
thing's
second. I've
moving.
forgotten, but
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Compared to a pistol, it's maybe 1,300,
yeah,
at the top end of pistol rounds.
Yeah.
you know.
And
So
I frankly just have to throw this out right now. Based on everything I've seen, and based on the fact that this guy was only 130 yards away. Yeah, like you said, when the two of us were going through basic training with the Army, and spent, at range week, I don't remember ever missing, even at the very beginning, it, honing my skills. Now, granted, I grew up in Idaho, and so I was around weapons all the time, um, but even with that, I don't remember anybody missing the 150-meter target. I mean, you
right.
have to be a horrible shot to miss at 150 meters. Just to put this into perspective, with a long gun like that, even with just empty sights, not even a scope, to miss at 150 meters, you are a terrible shot. Now, I throw that out there because this kid was at 130 meters. He was in a prone position and supported, meaning that his weapon was probably laying right on the peak of that building, and so he had a stable platform to fire from. Now, granted, he might have been uh, in a rush because he'd been caught by that police officer
Mm-hmm.
that uh, um, and we have to talk about that police officer that actually poked his head up and saw the guy, and then he aimed his weapon at him, and the guy ducked down. We'll address that in a second, but the bottom line is this kid was on a building in a prone position, in a supported prone position, so his weapon was stable at 130 yards. The fact that he missed is nothing short of the hand of God.
Yeah.
There,
It's
it's
pretty easy shot to make,
it's a
especially with a a 4 power scope and beyond that, whatever he had on there. You got a better scope. It's as they testified in the Malvo Muhammad trial, the Beltway snipers, and they said they wouldn't have the talent to do it. Anybody could do it. And if you're weaned on Call of Duty and games like that, you understand. Boy, there's no better. I wish we had that sort of training in the Army before you went out and trained the troops on how to do that, because you know what happens,
yeah,
and it's so realistic. But yeah, they're weaned on it. So yeah,
yeah.
it's a layup, man. It's a layup.
Oh
It's
yeah,
an easy
yeah.
shot to
It's
make.
absolute easy shot. And my point is, even without a scope, I don't know if there was a scope on the weapon or not, but uh, even
Yeah,
just
even without, right?
even just open sights, that is an
Yeah.
easy shot to make. And so I've watched that video numerous times in slow motion of the exact movement of President Trump's head, and I'm telling you, there was a guardian angel standing there, and the there's too much coincidental information going on, and to say that wasn't, in my opinion, and this is going way out there. Either President Trump is the luckiest guy to ever walk the face of the earth, or there was divine power that helped him. It's one of those two, because there's no way he should be walking on upright and in Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention right now, because 130 meters is nothing. Like I said, that's a layup. That's an easy shot. So,
Yeah.
take that for what it is. But I'm telling you, that other than, in my opinion, other than the hand of God, there's no way he should be walking right now. So, okay, with that out there, tell me what you think as far as the all the evidence that they're looking for. What do you think is the most probative? I mean, they know who the shooter was. All of that. It's like, what are they looking for right now? Because it's kind of a a open and shut case. I'm butchering that too, but
Hmm.
it's like they still need to go through all the steps, and they still need to go through all the motions of
Yeah,
gathering everything.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be all encompassing. So every bit of evidence that's available is going to be exhausted at this level. And this is what the expectation is. And the days of what does it matter, he's dead, or there's nobody to prosecute, those are long gone. And then post 9/11, boy, we're going back in years now, but things have advanced now where the expectation is so high. And that's why I say that shooting incident response team, the expectations are so high and the all-encompassing. So they're going to position him with his, if he had his phone on him, they're going to position him from any sort of media that's out here. There's going to be like equivalent of the Zapruder films from JFK, positioning him there as we have numerous. I'm going to say there's probably maybe 10 different images from that. Just to show how fast they move. If you recall, we were ping pong images back and forth, and we were sort of assessing what was going on. And you know what? I'll break into that for a second. We were assessing what was happening, and the initial report was, or what I assessed it incorrectly, was that it was coming from the crowd because they were stringing crime scene tape, and I should know better because the crime scene tape fairy comes out and puts crime scene tape everywhere, and it confuses everyone over here. And it's a well-meaning person just trying to, maybe control people and everything else. Actually, I think that went away. So I thought that we're probably out 12 feet or something, and there was a lot of movement to President Trump's right, and that would probably be life-saving measures for the man who was hit over there, aside from all the other chaos that took place. So there's an assessment that goes wrong. What goes right is that bullet whizzing right by him, and then looking at the trajectory. I initially said, I think it may have, if it went from down below, went over the crowd's head. And then when I looked at that cut across the ear, I said, that's looking pretty parallel to the ground there, which it turns out to be. So that the trajectory is what they're going to pin down on the evidence. The evidence all the way around on this. So let's start with the electronic measures. They're going to measure everything on here. They're going to measure his phone. They're going to put him in situ on that roof and his path of when he was pinging off of those cell towers. They're going to put the police officer back and forth. When he sees it, they're going to audio listen to those tapes over and over again. If he has a camera, they're going to get that off of the police officer's cameras. There's going to be the CAT teams, the counter assault teams for the Secret Service are going to have some kind of recording devices out there that's going to be recording. And of course, you have tremendous amounts of news services and other people filming this that's leaking out piece by piece here. So that's just from the personal device, from the audio devices, and we're not even touching the evidence yet. The trajectory is going to be, it's going to pin them down pretty quickly. It's not going to be hard to do, and there's going to be so many witnesses there and everything else. It'll pretty.
Oh yeah, well, there's two things in particular that I think as this unfolded. I mean, imagine actually being there, and when it's in real time, you don't have the luxury of the Monday morning quarterbacks that are like looking at this, and which is kind of what we're doing at this point. But at the same time, all the people that are criticizing, like the officer, for example, for a long time, meaning that, like, say the first 24 hours that this is unfolding, somebody said, one of the officers actually poked his head up, climbed the ladder. The initial story that I heard was he climbed the ladder up to the roof, saw the perpetrator. The perpetrator aimed his weapon at him, and then he went down. Well, what happened in reality, I learned last night, is that he didn't climb the ladder. He climbed up on top of another officer's shoulders. So he was standing on another officer's shoulders. Then when the perp aimed his weapon at him, he ducked down, but then he fell off of the shoulders of the officer. And that's when, so he was no longer able to engage with this guy. I'm sure he was jumping on the radio, and I know that that'll come out, like you said, the exact timelines of exactly when those transmissions were being made. But then he didn't have an angle in which to engage him, and then shortly after that is when the guy started firing. And maybe that's what saved President Trump's life, is because now the perp realized, I've been found, I've got to go, swung his weapon back around, aimed, and started firing. And maybe that's why he actually missed.
We would all shoot 40 out of 40. I think, competent light infantry people would shoot 40 out of 40 on that range that goes out to 300 meters with iron sights every single time, going back in the 1990s when those pop-up targets would come. but time is what gets you. You're waiting for that target to drop each time. So you can imagine that amplified by a police officer behind you, and that'll plumb rattle you, as Gene Hackman said in
Yeah.
Unforgiven. Somebody's shooting back at you, so you know what's coming on that. Now, here's the fog of war, and here's probably, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, and I think this is probably going to be correct. You have an operations center that's got all of those communication systems in one place. So I'm going to say there's probably 3 communication systems. Let's say there's just 2. They're operating on the state police frequency and the Secret Service. Even if you say 1, you're going to have everybody talking at once. That's a lot of people talking on one frequency. So any way you slice that, you're going to have that fog of war settle in auditorily by sitting there listening to the operations center what's going on. So now that's being either retransed or he's trying to understand it. I'm talking about the sniper that's up here. And if he hears that there's a police officer on the roof, that's going to really confuse what's happening. So on one of our drone footages either drone or helicopter footage where it passed over on the event, we looked at it later on and we saw our shooter in there. Nobody picked that up in between. So there you go as an example. I said, wait a second, that looks like wires hanging down there, and that doesn't, because the helicopters or drones are overhead, whatever that was reporting that. And I grabbed a still image of that one, and we talked about that. So in that fog of war, even they missed it. So my thought is that he doesn't want to shoot a cop that's out here is checking something, or people are yelling about something, or he might think there's another police officer. And if you have that break in continuity, they might think it's another police officer. He needs to get that verified. Now, there's a report out there saying that he asked for permission to shoot and it was withheld. That's going to be worked out. And this is part of this. The initial report is wrong, but and I hesitate to go out on a limb on this, but this is probably what's going to happen and what I've seen on these things before. And this is that fog of war. There's just so many people that can talk at once. And that's probably what happened and caused that quote delay that happened over here. But the guy got off shots and he killed a person and nearly, Yeah.
Well, there's also, I think, a big discrepancy between how many shots the perpetrator got off, this 20-year-old got off, versus the return shots from the snipers on the roof. And personally, I think he got 3. He got off 3 shots, and then the CA guys took him out. So I think all the the pops, pop afterwards. I think by then, by the time he got those quick 3 rounds off, the snipers were on him, and then the shots after that, I think, were all from the snipers, the Secret Service snipers on the roof. So, I mean, that's me, but it'll be really interesting to find out how many rounds this kid actually got off. To me, that's one of the most interesting things is, what was the response time? And I think it was within 1 or 2 seconds. So, everybody's like, well, he should have been taking him off. But like you said, I think that officer, even if the sniper had the authority or was denied, my understanding is he was denied shooting initially, even though he had the kid in his sights. They weren't sure, like you said, they weren't sure if that was a perpetrator or if that was an officer.
Yeah, to be determined. I mean, who knows if this? Who knows if that's even a fallacious report that's thrown out there by somebody to just whip up a frenzy even more so. I would doubt really that a Secret Service sniper is going to go out and make that statement right now, but everybody's going to button up on that.
I think they'd get in as much trouble making that statement as they would actually from the actions of the day. So to get back to this, I understand that success is determined by these shots never actually getting off. The fact that he was able to get off even 1 shot is a massive failure. Well, I mean, if we even go that far, the fact that this kid was able to get up on that roof, that in itself is failure. So, you know what, Tom, let's get into that. How did that even, how was this kid even enabled to get onto that roof? I mean, that 130 meters, that's nothing. Yeah. That had to be one of the primary buildings that had to be swept, that had to be secured. And anybody that's done even a defensive plan has to know that is a primary spot where a shooter would get up on.
Yeah,
How,
I don't
how
have
does
an
that
answer for
happen?
that. I really don't have an answer for that. I mean, I don't know. I it's inexplicable to me how you don't deny that area. 1,000 meters away, yeah, that's tough. In the wood line there, that's tough. But even that, you're going to have, some kind of countermeasures out there. But we're not talking that. We're not talking that. And I heard an explanation out there that the cat team is looking out long distance wise, out to 1,000 meters, meaning the snipers, the Secret Service snipers. And then did he slip between that gap? And I'll say this: I remember us assessing the underwear bomber and the shoe bomber back in the day when we were over at DHS, and everybody's working a profile that looking at different sort of methodologies of bombers over here. And then everybody has it locked down and they know their little job. And it's become, boy, I hate to sound like an old curmudgeon here, but it's become more that this is my job contract. This is it right here. This is what I do. So I'm just responsible for this. Contrarily, I would say certainly Vietnam and surely World War II is that it was about your buddies on the left and right and things like that. But we were trained and weaned on knowing the mission of next higher unit, contiguous units to your left and right, coordination with each, so we know who that is. So we have that. I'm sure that was done to a degree, but it's very difficult to do when you're dealing with different agencies and such like this, or people that are in a porous area. So my point is, if you're hyper focused out in the distance over here, and that's your area of responsibility or primary area of responsibility, and all of a sudden they're calling you into 130 meters, 100 yards. That's a wide change from it, even though it's high ground over there. I've heard that explanation. I don't know if that's accurate or not. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
when you're looking through a portal, it's different between looking at a map and understanding and looking at a phone. You're like looking through a portal, and this is why people can't navigate anymore, because they just go and listen to the GPS. So the culture has
yeah.
changed, is I guess what I'm
Well,
saying.
anybody that's looked through a high-powered scope, if you're looking out at 500 or 1,000 meters, and then all of a sudden the threat is at 130, actually, actually being able to come
Oh my
down
gosh. Yeah.
and see that, uh, you can't see that through a high-powered scope. It's hard to even say, but yeah, well, for me, um, I can't drive without my glasses on. But I'll tell you what, if I have my driving glasses on and I try to look at my phone, everything's blurry and I can't see it. So I have to take my glasses off. It's kind of the same thing. You have to actually move away from the scope to
Right.
to get your bearings again, and then you can kind of aim the weapon, you know, bring the power back down so that you're not at 10x, you're maybe at 4x, and then you can actually see the target. So
Right.
I think that had to happen as well. So anyway, there's so much speculation to go on here, but I think it was important to kind of discuss this kind of stuff, get it out there at what we're looking at and what they are probably looking at forensically and investigatively. It's like there's a list of things that they're going down. Then it's everywhere from, well, they've got DNA now, but now they've the fact that this guy didn't have any ID on him, there was no license plates, or maybe
Mm.
there was out of state license plates on the van, but they were able to get that within hours of the actual incident. So to me, it's, I know everybody wants to say, I want answers now, 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 now. How in the world did this happen? But if they actually look at it, step back, objectively look at this is an investigation. It's a complex investigation because of the number of people and the scrutiny of it. All of that combines into the pressure of getting this right. And I think having you as an expert on evidence response, you know, understanding what each one of these steps are, that's not even including the motive. That's somebody else is going to determine that. But just the forensics alone, this is a massive task.
It is. It is massive, and they want to be comprehensive, and they don't want to make a mistake on it. That being said, we can't sit on evidence. So I point to some of the lessons I learned from people coming back in theater and then working at DHS, being employed there. A lot of the pararescue guys, the Marines that were inside there, the SF guys, Ranger Battalion guys coming in. But also, when I took over the team later on, we did some joint work with one of the ComCam units out of Fort Meade, and they were excellent. They were going in theater and doing actual combat missions. So what we learned from that was that common operating picture, that whole time period over here. And so once you have a validated and a vetted piece of, I call it data integrity, and that means fingerprints and DNA coming back, a VIN number matching to it, and that's comported to all the components on there, not just looking at the registration. Once you have data integrity, that goes into that common operating picture. Now you can have the yellow lighted stuff that you're thinking is going to be the case, but that has to be articulated to the decision makers. But federal government is not set up like the military. They are not set up for that kind of common operating picture, that COP. To a degree they are, and they get better and better, but they're basically got a 20 to 25 year lifespan. You do not have this long lifespan that you have in the military where people come in very young and they stay the entire time. So you have generals and colonels. Generals, how about that evolved this and they improved that system the entire time. So there's where that mission creep, you want to call it that, but it's just that degradation of it. In addition, we fought so hard to have such a wide, diverse workforce. You have people looking at things through different optics. So you have, in the FBI, you have accountants, you have attorneys, you have prior service police officers, you have military, and they don't want us running things like that. That being said, I think we've done a good job of evidence exploitation, meaning, not sitting on evidence, but turning that stuff around pretty quickly now. And I think that's where we're at. And I have to give a nod to Black Falcon that's coming out of the Boston bombing. And that was really the jumping off point. Some of my friends put that together and briefed it and worked it. And that's where they put the entire scene back together. Also created those parking space methodology where all that evidence could be looked at in quick time without it going to an evidence locker. And there was a disposition for every piece of that. So we moved an entire evidence room out to the Black Falcon shipping in the warehouse area in Boston. So that's how they did that. So we learned each time over here, but the military doesn't have time to do that. They have to do things fast.
Right.
But their job is different than evidence. I mean, it's very encompassing, very detailed. And as an example, the standard for us was when you photograph something was 6-sided photography of every single object before it went in there. So you could go through that. And so that meant, all 4 sides and tops and bottom. And that takes time, but that's the way things have to be. And it comports exactly with a program that has every single item. So in this case, you're probably going to get, well, I'm going to say 1,000 pieces of evidence because there's going to be bloody, towels and EMS people and bleachers and impact marks and fragmentation, just the 7 rounds we're estimating right there. And you're going to get fragmentation. You're going to have shell casing that's 14. We have the rifles. We have the counter. So we're easily up to 20 pieces of evidence. You can see that's just off the primaries. It's going to go really quickly.
Yeah.
Really quickly.
Oh yeah, it's going to be huge. Then all the additional videos that they're asking for, anybody that has cell phone video. I imagine out of the thousands of people that were there, at least half of them had their phones recording. So the number of recordings I'm sure that are flooding into the FBI, the tip line has got to be just absolutely incredible. So, let's end it here, Tom. I don't want to get too much into the speculation of why this kid did what he did. The experts will cover that. Whatever his motivation was, it was inspired just by some sick ideology, something or other. Who knows? Want to just go out in a blaze of glory? I don't think that any of us know now. But the one thing that is reassuring to me is that whatever it is, this is such a high profile case. I don't believe that they can sit on it. Of course, you know what? Nashville sat on that school shooter for almost a year, with their manifesto. But so maybe they will, but hopefully not. I mean, the motives behind, if they figure out, who this kid was communicating with and where he was getting his training and understanding. And I'm assuming that's all on the dark web, but I don't know. What do you think?
And that's fair. Excuse me, that's fair because I don't have direct knowledge of this, but I wasn't involved in this. But Stephen Hatfill was very quickly pilloried for being the Amerithrax suspect, top suspect, and his name is, I don't know whether it was leaked or disclosed or whatever it was, but his life was hell after that. So is that offset by the need to make sure we don't have another anthrax attack that took place right on the heels of 9/11? Is that offset by that? Where I don't know, but I think that's a fair balancing act, is to make sure that the innocent parties on this are vetted out, and that a communication between these people does not mean you blast a list of everything else and what happened is what happened. So they need to be careful with that, and I think they will be. But the forensics themselves, those will stand tall. They'll stand by themselves, and if there's an anomaly in there, that anomaly is explained by something along the way. It's like I say, the shortness of the Remington 870 shotgun in the Navy Yard. I just refreshed myself reading the report today to make sure I had the facts of that correct. My team was there and helped Washington Field Office handle that scene, and it was preceded before me taking over there. But those facts will stand tall. Those anomalies will all be explained. And sometimes they just can't be explained. You just don't know which the sequence of the bullets hit when. It's hard to say, and that's just the fog of war and the loss of it. We don't have numbered rounds.
Yeah.
So I say that, but yeah.
All right, buddy. Hey, appreciate it. And let's one thing for all of you that are listening or watching this. First of all, please, we appreciate you, and please subscribe to the channel, but also pray for this country, because and pray for all of our leaders, no matter what your political affiliation is. The one thing that is gonna help this country is all of us getting back to more prayer and actually treating each other like human beings again. You cannot dehumanize the other side, because if you think about all the major wars, all the major incidents that led to massive human tragedy, it starts with the dehumanizing of the other side, and we just can't do that anymore. So
Sun Tzu said, I think it's over my shoulder, at the heart of all war is anger. So turn it off, man.
Yeah, it's not, whatever it is, we'll get to the bottom of it, but we've got to, well, again, you know what? We're just going to leave it there, buddy. Okay, Tom,
All right.
Appreciate it. We'll talk to you. It'll be interesting in a few weeks or a month, when this is all, fully vetted out and all of the forensics are actually made available. Then it'll be interesting to reflect back on this conversation and find out, because right now we're kind of in the fog of war. We're still in it right now because we don't really know the answers. But I think as the pros that are on the ground right now are pounding through all of that stuff, the ballistics and the trajectories and the phone data, all that stuff, it'll come out, and then we'll see how close we were.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.